Welcome to This Wild Journey, the podcast where your body, your brain, and your battle plan come together. If you're reeling from betrayal trauma, drowning in the chaos of divorce or custody court, feeling overwhelmed by post-trauma parenting, you are in the right place. We're here to untangle hard truths that bring clarity and courage so you can reclaim your power, protect your peace, and resolve trauma without reliving it. Let's get to work.
Hey friends, Bren here. Welcome back. Today's episode is going to feel like a deep exhale. If you've ever caught yourself trying to control everything and everyone in order to feel safe, this conversation's for you, especially if you've survived betrayal trauma or narcissistic abuse, because when life has taught you that trust leads to pain, control starts to feel like survival. But what if there's a better way? Sarah's here today to unpack something powerful: the difference between managing yourself and trying to manage outcomes. This is one of those mindset shifts that can unlock peace, healing, and freedom. Sarah, I already feel like this topic's going to hit deep. Why do survivors so often fall into striving and control?
Oh, Bren, it's because controlling your environment feels safer than surrender. So when you've lived in chaos, when you've been manipulated and gaslit and blindsided over and over again, you tend to start to believe that if you can just manage every detail, then maybe you can prevent things from blowing up again. So managing your environment becomes your survival strategy. And I want to point out that when you're reading the room and you're anticipating the conflict and you're smoothing things over before they explode, in this kind of situation, you're not a coercive controller who's trying to control other people from a place of power.
Right.
You're really just trying to control your environment in order to protect yourself from being shattered again. But the problem is that over time, that consistent, constant, overwhelming hypervigilance doesn't protect you. It wears you out. It exhausts you.
Yeah. I've heard so many survivors say things like, if I just do everything right, maybe I can keep them calm. But that kind of thinking keeps us trapped. So, what's the shift? What's the alternative to micromanaging our entire world?
Well, that's a good question. And the shift is this: you have to stop trying to manage the outcomes and start just managing yourself. Now, if you experienced a childhood where you needed to help manage the environment in order to survive, even from your parents or siblings or your surrounding environment, this is going to be extra difficult than if you had a great childhood, but you experienced that need to manage your environment just as an adult. But regardless of when this started in your life, the shift is to start focusing strictly on managing your choices, your core values, your peace. Because the bottom line is, you aren't God. You can't control other people. You can't control them enough to make them do good. You also can't love them enough to make them do good. You can't guarantee the results, but you can do the next right thing for the right reasons and trust God with the outcome.
That's so freeing. But I imagine for a lot of people listening, it's also scary.
Yeah.
So, what does it look like practically to manage yourself instead of trying to control everything?
Well, I think that it starts by shifting the questions that you ask. So instead of asking, how can I make them change so that I feel safer? Try, what is the healthiest, safest choice for me right now in this situation? Or instead of, how can I keep them from getting mad? Ask, how can I hold my boundaries and honor my need for safety? Instead of asking, oh, well, what if they get mad at me? Ask yourself, what's the long-term cost of betraying my own integrity? Instead of asking, what do I need to do to earn their approval so they'll like me? Ask, what's the best path to respect myself and be able to look in the mirror and respect the person I see?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of asking, like, how can I prove my worth to them? Asking yourself, do I believe I'm worthy, even if they never see it? So shifting these questions can change the baseline of where you're operating from, because now you're choosing peace on purpose instead of chasing it by performing for someone else.
Wow, that hits.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you're not saying just ignore what's happening. You're saying stand firm, choose wisely, and release what you can't control. So, talk to me about the faith piece. Where does trust in God fit into this?
Well, I know that maybe not everyone who's listening today is a believer in God, but I am, and I work with a lot of clients who really value their faith but are trying to untangle how faith fits with all of the harm that they've experienced. My experience and the experience of so many that I've worked with, this is really where the real anchor is. Letting go of control does not mean we stop caring. And it doesn't mean that we sit back passively and just let life happen to us because we're just not going to control anything. What it means instead is that we act in alignment with what is true and with what we believe to be right. And we let God handle all the things that are outside of our control. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean on your own understanding. So now, did you catch that? Your job is trusting, not blindly, and not trusting the wrong sources, but God's job is guiding. Your job is showing up and doing what you know to be right, telling the truth, living with integrity, following through, being reliable. God's job is handling the outcome. So even when you can't see what's ahead, even if today's court ruling isn't what you wanted it to be, even if your toxic ex is still lying and trying to manipulate you and smear you to others, you can choose to stay rooted in your integrity, to act based on your core values, to trust that God is working even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because that is where that real sense of peace comes from, not from controlling the outcome, but from knowing that to the best of your ability, everything you say and do is aligned with what you know to be true. So you could ask yourself, what if I could stop exhausting myself by trying to manage every possible problem before it happens? What if I could stop twisting myself into knots trying to make sure everyone around me is happy and I let them be responsible for their own feelings and I do what I believe God is calling me to do, what is right?
Mm-hmm.
What if you could finally breathe knowing that you are going to be okay no matter what others choose to say or do? Because you don't have to manage the universe. You just have to manage you.
Yeah, that's such a powerful reframe. So, for someone listening who's been stuck in this survival pattern, what are a few steps they can take right now to begin shifting?
Well, you can start here. First of all, Notice your own control reflex. Ask yourself, am I trying to control the other person, or am I focused on stewarding my own peace and my own conscience? You can shift your focus inward. Instead of thinking, how can I keep this from going wrong? Ask, how can I show up as the healthiest version of myself? And you can let go of the rest. Breathe. Remind yourself, I am not in control of anyone else. I am only responsible for my own choices. This doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're giving it back to the people who are actually responsible for themselves and to God, who actually holds everything.
That's so practical. And I know it's not easy, but it's such a better way to live. Friends, if you've been exhausted from striving, micromanaging, overfunctioning, this is your permission slip to just step out of that trap. Start trusting, start breathing, start taking care of you. And Sarah, I know you go deeper into this in Freedom Navigator. Can you tell folks how they can get more support?
Yes, absolutely. So Freedom Navigator is our trauma-informed, high-conflict communication coaching space where I help protective parents get clarity, build strategy, and learn how to shift their mindset to manage themselves well, not just survive the chaos. So if this episode hit home for you and you're sitting there thinking, I love how this sounds, but I really need some hand-holding. I don't think I can just figure this out and transition over to doing this just by myself. Check it out. You don't have to walk through this alone.
So good. Friends, check the link in the show notes to learn more. And if today's conversation gave you a little more peace or clarity or hope, share it with someone else who needs it. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you don't have to walk this wild journey alone.
We'll see you next time.
Brought to you by Wilderness to Wild. www.thiswildjourneypodcast.com